Let's move on to the next one. Has anyone in your life ever suffered from depression? Great question. This is one of those good qualifiers, and because of that, I'm going to move it up here. We're going to deal with the yes/no questions because they're simple and easy to work with. Yes, no, maybe. And we could clarify this a little bit more. Has anyone in your family, uh, anyone who is close to you that you've had a close relationship with, friends, family, significant other, you could be more specific because has anyone in your life ever suffered from depression could literally be somebody in your class that you had in class one time that you didn't even really know, but they are technically in your life. So how do you respond to that? The trick to writing a good question is trying to think of all the different ways that your question could be interpreted and then trying to make sure that you reduce all those misinterpretations by being specific enough to direct people to one or more answers. We're going to make sure that we're clicking on required as we go. Has that had an impact on your life? This question needs a little refinement. Has that? What is that? I know in your head when you're writing this, you're probably thinking, yeah, that is depression. But once again, this is one of those, you have to make sure that you're explicitly clear that it's super duper easy to understand. Like the person that just sees this question alone understands this question. So how has depression had an impact on your life? And this is a good opportunity to drop in a number scale. It's adjusting paragraph, avoid paragraphs. We're going to use a linear scale. It's going to ask you from what to what. And you could say from 1 to, what do you want that number to be? 5, 10. Remember, the more options you give, the finer detail you'll get, but the more confusing it might be. So think about how big your scale needs to be. If you are going to put 1 here as no impact, and over here it would have to be the most severe impact. Severe you might want to qualify this a little bit more, put some more information. And this is also a good idea to say, do I need a 1 to 10 scale? Do I need a 1 to 5, 1 to 4? One of the tricks to getting data that flips on one side or the other is when you give a 1 to 5 scale, you're going to end up with a lot of people that say, I don't know, kind of in the middle, 3. And people will just pick middle, 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 middle. So if you want to avoid that, give an even number. Force them to pick, is it 75%? Or 50%, is it a 2 or a 3 or a 4? And make sure that you really direct them where you want them to go. You're not trying to elicit a specific answer, you just want them to pick a side and give you some good data instead of being wishy-washy about it, if that makes sense to you guys. I hope it does. So we'll leave this as a 1 to 5. And you could also add in here your scale, right? 1 is no impact, 3 is moderate, and 5 is severe, right? You could add more information into this question, blah, 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 and help people understand what these numbers mean. The more that they understand what the numbers mean, then the clearer their answers will be and the better your data will be. How have they, who is they, talked to you about how they felt when they were suffering from that mental illness? This is a reword question, so you might want to use this as a 2-part question. The first one might be, has someone who has had depression confided in you or told you that they're suffering from depression? And then the follow-up question later in the survey can be, what's your experience with that? What kind of details have they told you? How did you experience that? This is a good qualifier question, so we'll probably end up changing this title. What is your experience with depression? Or, your basic knowledge. Are you aware? Has anyone suffered from? And then we'll add one in here. Has anyone ever told you that they were suffering from depression? And we've got a multiple choice. And we'll get rid of maybe. It's a yes, no. And there we go, required. We might also want to ask, do you understand what the difference is between a clinical depression and the commonly used word for depression? Once we get past this baseline of information, let's add a section. So we'll drop a section in there, and that's going to separate these questions. And then we can call this, section, what do you know about depression? And now we can talk about what the participant knows about depression. Now let's say that you want to ask different questions to different people. You can set up your form to do that. Go to section based on answer. There you go. So if yes, continue. If yes, or if no, continue to another one. So if it's no, whoops. If it's yes, go to your experience. If it's no, then you can go to that one. So this might be a very early on filter question. I'll get rid of this thing because it's just going to confuse stuff right now. But that's what you can do. Let's do a grid question. I'll show you this. We could do a multiple choice grid or a checkbox grid. Either way is fine. Multiple choice allows you to pick one thing per response. A checkbox would allow you to pick multiple things. So our rows. Someone you care about told you we're suffering from depression. Someone angry or with you, and you did not know they were. And then you can give all kinds of responses, right? I would be compassionate. I would be scared. You're going to need to pick responses that make sense to you. What I want you to see now is how this plays out. One thing you need to think about is how do your questions look when you actually write it as a survey? So we're going to go to a preview mode, and this is what it looks like. Okay, please answer yes. And what you select in here will actually show up in your results. So you'll probably want to get rid of those things when you're done testing. And I do encourage you to please, please, please test your survey before you send it out to people. Are you aware? Yes. Sure, yes, and then go to the next thing. And you're going to pick, I picked, I think, those things and that thing. And let's look at how this shows up here. So here's the situation. The text is okay, but if you write a really, really long thing, it's going to continue to get bigger. Also, if you add more boxes here, it's going to compress this text space so that it creates a lot of chained words. So let's just add a few more things. Column 3, column 4, 5, and 6. All right, so let's say we got 6 responses. Now when we go to this preview, see if it updated. Yep. Look how this gets compressed over here. So consider that. You need to maybe pick 4 to 5 at most columns, and then you'll have some room for your rows. But make sure that your rows don't make people read 1 word per line because it's going to be difficult to read, and if it's difficult to read, then people aren't going to do it. This is a good opportunity to turn a question that's really open into a number. So what we can do, we can approach this in a couple ways. We can reword this so that it creates a multiple choice, or we can do a checkbox. And we can say, what would your response be? It would be like A, B, C, or D, right? Just give them a multiple choice question, and then you can assign, after the fact, you can assign a point value to each answer. Maybe 1 is a pretty non-responsive type of response, and a number 4 answer would be an extremely responsive type of response. Positive, negative, you've got to decide that. But it will allow you to take something that is a qualitative response and turn it into quantitative. The same thing with checkboxes. You could say for each time a box is checked, that respondent increases the score of the question by 1. When you take a question and you can turn responses into numbers, then you can use them in data very easily. So consider making questions work like that. True or false, most people, this is a good kind of intro question. It's kind of fluff because it's not really what you're studying, but that's not a bad thing because sometimes fluff questions just help people get thinking about depression without actually realizing what the whole goal of the survey is. So it's a little bit of a misdirection. It's about the right topic, but it's kind of just getting people, I'm talking about depression, I'm thinking about it without having to really show what you're doing. Try to include maybe 1 fluff question or 2 fluff questions at most. I'd say like 1 in 10 is a pretty good ratio. If a parent had depression, okay, yeah, these would be good examples for checkbox or multiple choice. And when you have a multiple choice question or a checkbox, you can always click Add Other. And then this is a write-in response. So you can go in there and I like these 4. I'm also going to write in my own answer. And that will provide some flexibility if you want to get key terms, but keep in mind that for every response, you're going to have to read what that other response is and make sure it makes sense. Short answers and paragraph answers I would try to avoid when you're doing a data-driven survey. If it's a survey like you want to know opinions and it's more about case study, then short answer and paragraph makes sense. But keep in mind, for every survey that goes out with a paragraph answer, you're going to have to read a paragraph for every person. So if it goes out to 20 people, that's 20 paragraphs for one question that you got to sort through and then connect the dots to. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and I hope this helps you. Remember, for your questions that you're doing for tomorrow, I'm just looking for questions, right? Just give me some good questions. I want to see that you're making some progress on what you're doing, and we can have a dialogue about what's working and what's not working if need be. Hope everyone's healthy, safe, and having a great day. Bye-bye.